2 of our report explains that decision.
So it's really nice that the Russians are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And then this chicken shit line that, I mean, any lawyer, especially a constitutional lawyer, would be like, what the hell are you talking about? You can't prove a negative. You had a really funny tweet. What did you say about the No Agenda show?
Oh, yes. The No Agenda show is according to Mueller, because he didn't address it.
He could not prove it wasn't the best podcast in the universe.
It was not the greatest podcast in the universe.
So therefore, we are the best podcast in the universe.
I had phrased it because that's what everyone's doing. They're taking this out of context and they're saying, well, he didn't say this thus.
Yes.
Well, he didn't say this thus.
Well, let's listen.
He didn't say that the No Agenda podcast is not the best podcast in the universe.
Yes.
Thus, it must be the best podcast in the universe by the same logic.
Yes, and I dare anyone, please find evidence that the No Agenda podcast is not the best podcast in the universe. You will not be able to prove it. Here's Alan Dershowitz.
First of all, no prosecutor could ever say that a person is guilty because prosecutors only hear one side of the case. They don't have their evidence cross-examined. There's no defense lawyer. There's no opportunity to challenge. There's no due process. So all a prosecutor can ever say is there's sufficient evidence to indict. Let's move it to the next step, which is a trial. Look, one point that's clear is if you cannot indict a sitting president, why do you have a special counsel to investigate a sitting president? Special counsel are not supposed to just make history, write for the future. They're supposed to decide one issue. Is there sufficient evidence to indict or isn't there? And if Mueller says that that's a moot issue, what was he doing? He should have ended this investigation the day they determined that there was no evidence of collusion, and he continued it on and on and on, and that was a serious mistake.
Now, this is the stuff you need to understand. He doesn't determine if someone's guilty or not. He can indict. He can say, I have probable cause, and we need to take someone to court. And I hadn't even considered the whole idea of, well, if you know up front that you can't indict a sitting president, then why are you even investigating it? Because it's all messaging and it's all cover-up. And this was the last part of his cover-up, of his mop-up operation, which we'll get to and reiterate once again in a few minutes. Little messaging. Hello, Democrats. I want you to make a big stink so we can make sure no one finds out what this is really about. I'm going to give you some information, some breadcrumbs.
The department's written opinion explaining the policy makes several important points that further informed our handling of the obstruction investigation. Those points are summarized in our report, and I will describe 2 of them for you. First, the opinion explicitly permits the investigation of a sitting president because it is important to preserve evidence while memories are fresh and documents available. Among other things, that evidence could be used if there were co-conspirators who could be charged now. And second, the opinion says that the Constitution requires a process other than the criminal justice system to formally accuse a sitting president of wrongdoing.
Oh, well done. Well done, Robert. Yeah, you gave the machine just the amount of red meat it needed to keep spinning all the way up to the elections. This is meddling in our elections right here. And now he extracts himself as he waves off, you can't make me testify. You can't subpoena me. I'm Bob Mueller.
At one point in time, I requested that certain portions of the report be released. The Attorney General preferred to make the entire report public all at once. And we appreciate that the Attorney General made the report largely public, and I certainly do not question the Attorney General's good faith in that decision. Now, I hope and expect this to be the only time that I will speak to you in this manner. I am making that decision myself. No one has told me whether I can or should testify or speak further about this matter.
He doesn't say no one has mentioned if I can be forced to testify in this matter. This guy is above the law, literally.
There has been discussion about an appearance before Congress. Any testimony from this office would not go beyond our report. It contains our findings and analysis and the reasons for the decisions we made. We chose those words carefully, and the work speaks for itself. And the report is my testimony. I would not provide information beyond that which is already public in any appearance before Congress.
And he's out. Beautiful. Great extraction. So he gave little compliment to Barr. He gave the Democrats what they needed to feed the machine for a little bit. And he really distorted the process and explaining to the American people what had really, what he really found out, which is, we got nothing, so move on.
We got nothing.
But I got some great constitutional analysis from Jonathan Turley. He is a constitutional professor at George Washington University, the Spook Academy, and I had to go to the BBC to find this. You could not. I did not find, and except for the Dershowitz, who's also, he's Mr. Soundbite. This was I thought pretty good.
Well, for more on today's announcement, I spoke with constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley. What do you think Mr. Mueller actually achieved with this statement?
I'm not sure, because there's a lot of curious aspects to the statement. On one hand, Mueller was saying that this policy that you can't indict a president also meant to him that you couldn't reach conclusions on whether a president committed a crime. And that led a lot of us to scratching our heads, because no one has ever made that argument before. Those memos deal only with the prosecution of a sitting president. They say nothing about reaching conclusions. That's what a special counsel does. So Mueller was saying that he basically redefined his role and that he never intended to reach conclusions on crimes. That was a surprise to everyone. For the last 2 years, Congress and the Justice Department have been expecting conclusions.
So why the ambiguity? Do you think he's just kicking the can down the road? Is this actually a referral for impeachment?
Well, I think that he is clearly indicating that Congress should take this up. But the legal basis for what he said in the presser was confusing at best. Even if these memos were ambiguous, the Attorney General of the United States and the Deputy Attorney General, his immediate supervisors, told him to reach conclusions, according to Attorney General Barr. The Attorney General makes policy at Department of Justice, so he ignored that, and it led a lot of us wondering what's going on here. He reached conclusions on crimes associated with collusion, and then he didn't when it came to obstruction.
So what can clear this up? Because Mr. Mueller was supposed to be that person.
Well, now it's in the hands of Congress, but the Democrats are sort of caught in this vortex of their own making. They have pumped up impeachment, but the leadership doesn't want to impeach Donald Trump, and the only thing they want less than impeaching Donald Trump is actually removing Donald Trump. He's good for the Democrats in office, but this is going to put more pressure on Nancy Pelosi. A lot of Democrats are saying, well, what gives? When are you going to start an impeachment inquiry?
Is there something that Congress could do that falls short of impeachment but still expresses their displeasure and has some kind of legal weight? Or what about censure?
Censure is really not something the Constitution contemplates. You either impeach and remove a president or you do not. And the Democrats have control of the House. They probably could impeach this president. He would then have to stand trial in the Senate. But anything short of that is going to be viewed as a victory by Trump. What they want to do is to investigate every aspect of his life, and they're going to proceed to do that. And Mueller certainly gave them support for doing that. He kept on saying, we couldn't rule out a crime. And it led a lot of us with well, what exactly are you doing? You're saying that you can't reach a conclusion, but you have almost this coquettish way of, doing a wink and a nod that I can't rule it out, And I thought the whole press conference was a little bit odd. And then he refused to take questions. So it's sort of like Moses down from Mount Sinai.
Jonathan Turley, thank you very much.
That's exactly what it was. The God Mueller came down and told everybody.
I have 3 clips.
Mm-hmm.
One, let's do the one that addresses this straight head on, which is from PBS. And this is Yamiche, who is on the Trump side of this. She's not on the side of it, but she's the one who's following the White House side of it. And she has a very interesting, and I believe the accurate take on what's going on with Trump.
Well, the White House and President Trump really have a simple reaction to the threat of impeachment. Bring it on. The president is saying that essentially if he were to be impeached, that it would help him in a 2020 campaign. White House aides have been telling reporters all day if the president was to be impeached, he would use that in 2020 and possibly even be able to win back the House of Representatives from Democrats if he was able to use that message. It's also important to note that the president for a long time has been saying there's a deep state conspiracy against him that, of course, has not been proven. But the idea of an impeachment could actually play into that. You could see the president double down on the idea that people are very upset about the 2016 election, and impeachment is just one other thing that's being added to that. So that's why we're seeing, as Lisa noted, that Democrats are really proceeding cautiously, because the president in some ways is saying, try me, impeach me if you want to, but I'm probably going to come out ahead.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too.
I mean, the timing of it.
I think Pelosi knows this, but they're going, and I pointed this out in the newsletter, that they're going after Pelosi. I think all these clips that we've been seeing are
yes, of the I'm Not Coherent version created by NBC, as far as I know. Yeah,
and it could have easily been. And I saw recently, I tweeted this when I saw it on the Twitters. Mm-hmm. A CNN story about her being an idiot, and it was a picture, one of the worst pictures I've ever seen of her. And there's no reason for CNN, a big Democrat stronghold, to make her look like so horrible. Mm-hmm. And I believe there's a movement, and I think the Justice Democrats could be behind it, or any number of groups that want to get the impeachment.
Well, also, I was thinking about this. Pelosi and Schumer, the leaders, they were very clear. We need to take back the House. We need to impeach Trump. Then we got a lot of excited young Democrats, including the Justice Democrats, of which only 2 got in, but we have a new House, and the women who came in, but also the men. But I think the women are most visual. Said, all right.
Only 2 got in, but a bunch of others that are in joined them.
Of course they did.
Like Ro Khanna.
Right, but this is now the new Democrat Party, and they don't have the historical experience of how bad impeachment can be for the party impeaching the opposite side. It can hurt politically. They also, although they know the history, maybe they're saying, you know what, this is the new Democrat Party. This is the new world. It's different now, and they're going to give it a shot. But for sure, these videos that showed Nancy Pelosi as an old bag who doesn't have it together is not in her favor. That they're pushing, and I think that she will have to fish or cut bait, and I think she'll fold.
Maybe she hasn't shown evidence of folding in the past, but she could.
Yeah, but
I think that these guys also have another couple of thoughts in mind. They have these are young Democrats. They're, you could say, foolish. They have a constituency that is probably talking in their ear, saying, "Hey, when are you going to impeach Trump? When are you going to impeach Trump?" And they have to assuage these people, even though they're just maybe a loudmouth minority of the people that voted for him. And so they're all in on this. I mean, these people are serious, and other people like, Elizabeth Warren, who actually doesn't have to vote on this because she's not in the House, but they've gotten on the bandwagon because of the base, as they like to call it.
Kamala Harris. Nothing changed. Nothing in the report changed. All of a sudden, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, they're all like, oh, yeah, it's time to impeach. We got to impeach. Bob gave us the blessing. God, Bob.
And this was perceived as such. I have 2 clips from MSNBC pretty much saying what you said. Could start with, let's play the second clip. This is MSNBC 2, and this is what they had a 6-pack of people up on the screen, and they're all going on and on and trying to interpret what Mueller said, and everyone agrees that Mueller was hint, nudge, nudge, impeach.
This was one of my top line takeaways. After he said, "I am not permitted to indict the president," he went on to say that requires a process other than the criminal justice system to formally accuse a president of wrongdoing. You don't need to be Rand McNally to see that roadmap.
Rand McNally? What kind of reference is that? Who's Rand McNally?
Well, apparently, unbeknownst to you, Rand McNally was one of the great map-making companies.
Yeah.
And he was referencing them.
Wow.
Even though nobody uses Rand McNally maps
That's
anymore.
pretty obscure by today's terms. I want to hear it again.
You don't need to be Rand McNally to see that roadmap. He was virtually announcing, Congress, do your job.
He's shining light on the breadcrumbs. All right.
So that's where we stand, and I think it'll be interesting. And I think they're going to, I don't know, it's going to be, we're going to get to see how strong a leader Pelosi is if she can keep this from happening.
Now, everybody.
If she folds, which she might, like you said, I don't think she will, but if she does, it's going to be great for the show.
Oh, it's all good for the show. A reminder, as we put our no agenda hats on a little tighter, this has nothing to do with the Russians, has nothing to do with really Trump even. It has to do with the fact that the Obama administration was caught by the NSA and the FISA court, and I put the documents in the show notes again under the heading of any collusion.
Any collusion?
Where you can see that between 2012 and 2016, 4 years long, 4 FBI consultants, meaning they were not FBI, they consulted on behalf of the FBI. I'm informed they might have actually been contracted by Susan Rice. We'll find out eventually. That stuff is all redacted in the documents. They were using 702 queries about queries on American citizens in the NSA database, which is against the law. It's the number one thing that wasn't supposed to happen with this type of collection. And the rate, which is called an error rate in the documents, was 85%, meaning that 85% of these 4 years of what these 4 contractors were looking at was actually spying on American citizens. That needed to be covered up. And they were spying on Democrats. They were spying on, they also were spying on Trump eventually until they got caught, which is they had to shut it down. That was, I think, in April of 2016. And that's why we had to bring in the Steele dossier to make it all look like it was all above board. And I'm on the beat with Joe DeGenoa, who now, this is, I had no idea. There's a radio station in D.C., WMAL, and they have a morning show called Morning on the Mall. That would be the mall of... the mall. The mall. The mall is the mall is
the mall.
Dumb mall. It's dumb mall. Dumb mall. And I have 2 clips because he explains it so well. This one is self-explanatory.
You are watching the quintessential Washington power battle, and here's the problem for the agencies, the FBI and the CIA. They have one disadvantage. They can leak to the Post and the Times, but they do not have subpoena power, and Bill Barr does. We are headed toward a gigantic fight. The intelligence community, which includes the FBI, is in full resistance to disclosing what they did during the presidential campaign. But here's the other problem they have, and they're very fearful of. The FISA court has already found that there was political spying going on starting in 2012. Not 15, not 16, 2012. Why was that spying going on in the Obama administration? The FBI and the CIA desperately fear that if these disclosures become publicly known in a wide-ranging way, their powers may be cut back, FISA may be restricted, and some additional people may go to prison. Christopher Wray is now standing in the way of history. Make no mistake about it. Christopher Wray has become an enemy of the people.
And the president is doubling down on his declassification, heating up this war between the Department of Justice and the intelligence community.
The Attorney General is one of the most respected people in this country, and he has been for a long period of time. He's going to look at a lot of documents, Some he might find interesting, maybe he'll find none interesting. But for over a year, people have asked me to declassify. So what I've done is I've declassified everything. He can look. And I hope he looks at the UK, and I hope he looks at Australia, and I hope he looks at Ukraine. I hope he looks at everything, because there was a hoax that was perpetrated on our country. It's the greatest hoax. Excuse me. It's the greatest hoax probably in the history of our country, and somebody has to get to the bottom of it. We'll see.
You got to appreciate it. I'm surprised he didn't say the greatest